Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to my video on my journey of eye floaters over the past, it's been 17 years now. So as those of you who have watched my videos in the past couple of years know that I've posted a number of updates regarding my vitrectomy for floaters eye surgery that I've had done in both eyes. And generally speaking, I've just been running through how my eyes have progressed, if there were any major complications, which so far there have not been in either eye, and just overall how satisfied I've been with the procedure itself and the net result. I had my first surgery done about 7 years ago, and the second one in the other eye was done 4 years ago. And so at this point, I've been able to essentially rule out the major complications that would arise from that surgery, which would include infections, retinal detachment, retinal tears, cataracts, all those things I was fortunate enough to avoid coming out of the surgery. Yes, they could still occur, but whether or not we could correlate them with that procedure at this point would be a little bit difficult given how much time has passed. Yet, I continue to struggle with some eye floaters in both eyes, and I continue to get views and comments on my videos in terms of how I'm doing, etc. So I wanted to post a more generic overview of kind of what I've learned since I first started seeing eye floaters when I was 22 years old, senior in college actually, so 17 years ago, up to today, which is post-vitrectomy in both eyes, and kind of what I've learned, maybe how things have changed a bit in the medical community, and what I might do differently, and just generally my experience, and hopefully, I mean, don't take this as advice because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional in any capacity, nor am I promoting or pushing any of these treatments, but I had some success with them. I want to share my experience. I want to let the floater sufferers out there know there's some hope for them if you're the right candidate and meet the right doctor, etc. And I want to basically run through a few topics. So this is going to be a much longer video than some that I've posted in the past because I'm not just giving an update on how I'm doing. I'm going to run through a number of topics which I hope you all will find helpful. But given that, I've broken them down on the whiteboard here. And I think that this might help because this is, perhaps some of these topics might not be relevant to you, etc. You can kind of use this as a guide. I'm going to take them through in order. If you want to save time and maybe skip ahead, or if there's something particularly relevant to you want to focus on, I thought this would be helpful because this will be a longer video, and I know how annoying that could be when I'm watching videos myself. So the first topic I'm going to discuss is my experience with eye floaters. I'm going to run through each of these topics here and then go back to that. The second one is going to be younger patients, kind of what our options are, how they're a bit more limited, and what some of the risks and benefits are of these surgeries. Third one is PVD, post-vitreous detachment, why it's incredibly important to know if you've had it before you undergo any of these surgeries, as well as if your doctor is going to be inducing it in the surgery, and I'm going to get to the reasons why. Next one is safety. I'll touch on that briefly because, again, I am not a doctor nor your doctor, and I don't want to advocate this surgery as being ultra safe or in any capacity, but I want to touch on just kind of what I've learned there. And then recurrent floaters, which is the primary, to me, focus of today. So those are the things I'm going to run through. Set the phone down, talk about this. First one, again, my experience. Perhaps you've had something different. Perhaps you've had a better, hopefully not worse experience with respect to floaters. And I don't want to discount anything that you yourself have personally experienced, felt, resulted from a surgery, any of those things. My experience is unique. I hope you have a better one. This is the point of that. This is not to argue with anyone or to try to disprove anything that anyone else has said, but I have my own personal experience over the past 17 years with eye floaters. I have listened to countless YouTube videos with respect to other people's experience, as well as other doctors who happen to post videos. I've met with a number of different specialists, probably about 10 over the years, who have ruled out treatment for me, refused to do treatment for me, treated me, did follow-up visits. So And I've also read countless studies which are available on the internet, and I'm happy to link some in the comment section below if any of you are interested, in that I feel fairly informed in terms of what eye floaters are, how they occur, what can be done about them, and risks and benefits of these procedures. But again, this is just from my own personal experience, and you might have something different, or you might feel the risk is not worth it for you. And again, I would not argue with that. This is just my experience from noticing them 22 years ago. So we're going to get into it. I noticed a whopper of an eye floater in my left eye when I was 22 years old. I'll remember it till the day I die. I was driving back to college, back to my senior year after spring break, and I just noticed this huge web in my left eye. And I wore contacts at the time. And I thought, oh man, something's on my contact, an eyelash, something. It was extremely annoying. I kept around my eye trying to get rid of it. Could not get rid of it. I said, well, when I get back to my dorm, I can't wait to take my contact out, flush it, put it back in, because gosh, this is so annoying. This is going to be a tough drive, about a 5-hour drive. It frustrated me the whole way. I get back, take the contact out, scrub it. My vision was terrible, so I thought it'd be fine. I kind of still noticed it, and I said, gosh, maybe it wasn't on my contact. Maybe it's just in my eye. I'm going to go to bed. I'm sure when I wake up in the morning, it'll be gone. Not the case. It was there. I started immediately contacting doctors, doing research, found out I have eye floaters. That was I didn't even know they existed. Didn't know this was a thing. It happened, and I was told right out the gate, it's nothing to worry about. They might go away. This brings me to really my topic number one. In my experience, eye floaters do not go away. I had that major one in my left eye, never went away. I continued to get more in my left eye. Then they developed in my right eye, continued to get more in my right eye. I have never once had an eye floater leave my line of vision or just disappear. That seems to be a common answer or rebuttal at least, from eye professionals when you come in first contemplating about eye floaters. Now, if there's an eye floater result of a surgery, I had some black spots come up post my vitrectomy surgeries. Those disappeared. I think those were some blood or maybe just some other type of debris that ended up being washed away. I think if any of you out there have had cataract surgery, you've probably experienced something different. Some specks in your eye, those went away. Those are not really what I'm referring to. I'm referring to pure eye floaters that develop because the vitreous is detached. In my experience, those don't go away at all. If you're out there and they have gone away for you, God bless. I wish it happened to me. I'm not saying that it can't, but in my experience, doctors will tell you, don't worry about it. It's very possible they'll go away, or you, quote, get used to them, or you'll learn to ignore them. And that is not my experience in the slightest. I have never learned to ignore any of the eye floaters I've had, and none of them have certainly disappeared. So I have my own personal view on why that's common. They're trying to give you optimism and hope. Doctors do not want, this is a conversation they have every day. Patients come in talking about eye floaters. They don't want to treat them with the procedures that are available today, and I'll get to that I'll get to the why behind that later on. And they're trying to let you know that they might go away. Don't worry about it today. Get out of my office. They might go away in the future. It's nothing to be concerned about. You don't need to explore anything. I think it's their way of, A, just telling you that on the off chance it does go away, they're going to look like a genius. B, they want to get you out of the office today. And C, they don't really have a good answer for you, because the options are just ignore them or proceed with the surgery. And telling people that they might go away, you'll learn to live with them, is probably what most people want to hear initially. And so they'll tell you that, but that is not my experience. And if you're an eye floater sufferer for the first time or it's new, I wouldn't expect it. Why are doctors reluctant, though, to perform this surgery? And here's where I want to cut them some slack. Again, I am not an eye surgeon, I'm not an eye professional, and I'm not going to sit here and say they should be doing something and they're not. There's very good reasons why they're reluctant to do this surgery, because I agree, eye floaters are not painful, they're not harming your eye in any way, and these surgeries are invasive. And if I was an eye surgeon, and someone came to me and said I had eye floaters in my eye, I don't really have a great way of measuring how annoying they are for you. And to suggest doing a vitrectomy surgery or some other type of laser surgery on an otherwise healthy eye, logically, that's a difficult barrier to overcome. And I completely understand and even mostly agree with why they're reluctant to do so. Because you come in, you say I have a few eye floaters, they're going to say, look, I know it's annoying. These surgeries have major risks. I don't want to take a healthy, otherwise perfectly functioning eye, poke holes in it, shoot laser beams into it, do any of these types of things if you can just get used to them. And I would say for the most part, I have some small little floaters that don't bother me that much. If that was all I was dealing with, I would absolutely not undertake any of these procedures or recommend someone do that. And I think that's part of the struggle that eye professionals have is how do they measure how annoying this is to you? For me, I had very large floaters, very annoying. I spent most of every waking day being frustrated with them for about 10 years before I had my first procedure. So it was something where I knew how annoying they were to me. I was able to ultimately get in touch with a retinal specialist who was able to perform that surgery, but I completely understand why most of the doctors, of which I talked to several prior to that, were reluctant to do. And again, this is only something that you're going to know your own personal experience are. Are these eye floaters so bothersome, so annoying, that you're willing to undertake an eye surgery for it? And what I would say is, if they're only mildly annoying, or you think you can learn to live with them, I would refrain from doing this surgery for a number of reasons. Especially if you're a younger patient. That's number two. This is the reason why. YAG laser is probably not going to work for you. I'm surprised this is even a thing. I see a lot of videos out there, people promoting alternatives to vitrectomy to get rid of eye floaters. I see eye drops. People talking about eating pineapple. You know, it's really unfortunate to me that there are videos out there. I know how annoying eye floaters and how depressing a symptom that can be. And it frustrates me that people are out there making videos and selling products that do not work and taking advantage of it, which is part of the reason why I feel compelled to do these videos, because I want to inform people and I want to kind of fight back against all that misinformation that's out there. Laser surgery seems to be a big thing as well. For younger patients, not a great option because our floaters tend to be closer to our retina, which means that the laser beams are going to be going very close to try to break up those floaters at our retina, and that is not a risk that most doctors will take, nor should you. And it's very different than if you're older and you have them further away from the retina and they can kind of break them up. I think the effectiveness of the laser surgery is still up for debate, but regardless, I've met with surgeons who perform that, have ruled me out as a candidate because I'm younger and because my floaters were closer to the retina. So keep that in mind if you're pursuing that as an option, your age, and where the floaters reside in your eye. The risks of vitrectomy, I kind of talked about the main ones, how I didn't experience them, not trying to downplay it. It's just kind of a mix of 2 and 4. In my opinion, it's a relatively effective it's a very effective surgery, relative safety. Now, I already mentioned I wouldn't recommend someone doing this with mild symptoms, but I personally think the risks are overblown by the medical professionals that you initially talk to, because once I've had the surgery done and I do follow-ups, I've done, and just so those who are now only watching my videos for the first time know, I've had follow-ups and I've needed to go out of town on both instances to get the vitrectomies done. So I've done follow-ups with local ophthalmologists and retinal specialists in my area who did not perform the surgery. But once I have those initial follow-ups with them, once they clear me, we have more honest, frank discussions about the risks and benefits of vitrectomy surgery, and they begin to downplay just how risky it is. They'll take a look. I actually force follow-ups because they say, oh, your eyes are fine, nothing's going to happen now, you don't need to come back. And I say, no, I want to come back in 6 months, I want to come back in a year, I want to continue to monitor the overall health of my eye. They feel it's not even necessary unless a problem comes up. And that sort of speaks for itself. If you don't have an immediate complication from the surgery, some of these same doctors that really ruled out even performing the surgery in the first place suddenly think you're going to be fine. Now, why is that? Again, they don't want to promote needless surgery. Because look at it this way. If they do it and something goes wrong, they're on the hook for it. So I completely get that. They're going to be sued, challenged, probably harassed on the internet, whatever the case may be. They don't want to perform unnecessary surgeries and have something go wrong. Completely understand that. But once it's done, we start to have more frank discussions, and they begin to peg the overall success rate of the surgery to be in the upper 90s, 95% and above. 1 to 2% chance of retinal tears and detachments. Cataract formation is really dependent on your age. And that leads me to the benefits thing. I think if you are seeing severe case of eye floaters, the benefits are likely to outweigh the risk. Now, the benefits can be limited because that brings me to number 3, the PVD induction. If you have not had post-vitreous detachment or just a mild one, and you have a good part of your vitreous still intact, the day of the surgery, the retinal specialist is either going to just remove what has detached, or they are going to induce a complete vitreous detachment or near complete detachment. They're unlikely to remove all the vitreous. In some cases, they want to relieve some to help stabilize the retina. In other cases, which was mine in my second surgery, they are going to be reluctant to really remove it forcefully, what's not already detached. And this is actually related to number 2, the younger patients. And if you're out there, I think this is critically important to understand. When I had the first surgery done, the surgeon induced a PVD, got the majority of the vitreous removed, again, except for a sliver that was left purposefully. And I have had almost clear vision out of my eyes since then. 1 peripheral floater that I barely ever noticed. My left eye, I've been extremely pleased with the result. In my right eye, that was not the case. He removed the vitreous that had been detached. He tried to remove it. He tried to induce a PVD, ended up stopping that mid-procedure. When I spoke to him about this after, obviously I was under during the procedure, we had a conversation because I noticed some floaters remaining in my right eye. This was a different surgeon. He said when he tried to induce and he tried to pull and detach the vitreous away, it tugged back. It should be kind of a clean break. Felt resistance. Now, if they pull too hard, they can cause that tear, they can cause that detachment, and that's really what they want to avoid. It's one of the major risks of the surgery. He said he felt a tug, backed off on doing it, didn't want to create a problem, so more vitreous was left than he wanted, but that was the safest course. I wasn't as happy with the outcome of the surgery, and I'll explain why, but I'm not going to fault him for that. I didn't want a major complication because he tried to force something he shouldn't have forced. But that's the younger patient paradox. Our eyes are healthier, our vitreous is likely to be more intact, and it's going to be more difficult to induce and pull it away. I mean, think about this, when your eye, if it's older, a lot of the vitreous is already gone, it's easy for them to go in and clear it out. If your eye is younger, healthier, that vitreous is firmer, your eye hasn't aged, it hasn't weakened, it's going to be harder for them to tug that away. So in some surgeries, paradoxically, you're younger, you're healthier, your recovery is better, the surgery is better, you're less risk. Vitrectomy for floaters is kind of the opposite. If you're younger, your eye is healthier, that actually makes this procedure more difficult to get a real effective result because they've got to tug that vitreous and pull that away on a healthy, strong eye that would be much easier to do on an older, weaker eye that's already started to degenerate at a faster clip. So that's why that happened. And I'm going to say younger is anywhere from 20 when I first started noticing them up to 40s, 50. I think 50 plus people are much more at risk of having cataract formation, having PVDs, just having general degeneration of their eyes. So really this younger, certainly your 20s and 30s, but perhaps even a bit older than that into your 40s, you're going to probably still have a fairly healthy, intact vitreous. So what I would say, my takeaway from this, find out if your doctor is going to induce the PVD if you're younger. If they're not, you're probably not going to be as thrilled with the result. Here's why. I had some floaters remaining post that surgery because you could not remove them. And number 5, I've now had recurrent floaters. This past summer, I noticed a few more floaters in my right eye, which has never happened in my left. Newly developed ones. Quite depressed about it. Really not what I would have liked. And why did that happen? Because so much of the vitreous was left intact. I went and saw a retinal surgeon last couple of months, did a few checkups, and yes, that's why. I've had more vitreous now degrade, detach. That's created some new eye floaters, and it's leading me to consider second surgery to get rid of the ones that have now developed and perhaps even attack some of those residual ones from my first surgery. He's reluctant to do that. I still have a lot of vitreous. We might run into the same, I still have a lot intact. Might run into the same problem when he tries to pull that out. He's not going to be able to, so that's a in progress debate that I'm having with myself and also with that retinal specialist to see if this is something I should pursue now or later on. Safety I've kind of talked about. I don't want to oversell this, but I really think that if you are having a severe case of eye floaters, this is something that you should research and talk to eye specialists about, because minus the hiccup that I've had this summer where I've had a newly developed floater, it's one, but it's kind of a long strand, so it feels like multiple. This is an effective surgery. I was very, very pleased with how my left eye has progressed over 7 years, and up until this summer, very pleased with my right eye. For the last 4 years, I've had very clear vision out of my 2 eyes. Eyes were very healthy. Most of the eye floaters were removed. It really impacted my quality of life. And if this is something that you're struggling with, and I feel you. I know exactly what you're going through. If you're waking up every day and it's the first thing you notice, you think about it all the time, I would really start to explore these types of options, because it really, really changed my life in a positive way. And I think that I'm a case example in that now that I've had some recurrent floaters develop, I'm considering doing this surgery again, and that sort of speaks for itself. Don't want to downplay the risk, though. It's really difficult for me to figure out the best wording on this, because I don't want to be out here promoting this surgery as overly safe and overly effective, and people go and do this when they really shouldn't. There are risks of major complications, and if this is something that you can live with, and only you know this, if they are not really that bothersome, maybe you've had some disappear in the past, you're hoping the new ones disappear too, then I would say be reluctant, because you don't want to create a major problem when you don't have a major problem already. But I view eye floaters as a major problem for me, the ones that I have. If that's the case for you, I think the effectiveness of the surgery really speaks for itself. But if you're someone like my wife, for example, she didn't like to get the flu shot. This is not the surgery for you. You're going to have needles and holes poked in your eye, them injecting saline and pulling out vitreous and all this type of stuff. This is a very invasive surgery, and you really want to make sure that you have the symptoms to justify that. That's my biggest takeaway from this whole thing. I think a lot of you out there probably do, but some of you probably don't, and I would caution you against pursuing this type of procedure if that's the case for you. The recurrent floaters, just to wrap up, is really a big thing. I mean, it's part of why I'm doing this video today. I've done a lot of favorable videos on the vitrectomy procedure and how pleased I was with the net result, how pleased I was with the recovery. But know that this is not going to be a 100% cure, and there is the potential to develop floaters again in the future if you do not have the majority or all of the vitreous removed. In my left eye I did, in my right eye I did not, and now I'm seeing some recurrent ones. So weigh that against your current systems and the risk of this surgery. If you can wait, if you're younger and you can wait, do so. Because they're going to have a better chance of removing more of the vitreous, and you're going to have a better overall result on average. If you're younger, that's a tough sell. I was 22 when I first noticed them, and I had the first surgery done. I was 32, and I had done. So I waited 10 years. I wasn't going to wait another 20. Okay, to have a weaker eye and try to avoid recurrent floaters and all that kind of thing. I had just had enough. I plowed ahead. I had a good experience. 3 years later, I had the surgery performed on the other eye. Now I'm debating my next step. But if you are younger and these are not that bothersome, wait. If you're older and they're not that bothersome, wait. You're very likely to develop more in the future. If you don't have the surgery, probably with a certainty, if you've had some, you'll get more. And if you're younger and you're not going to be able to remove most of the vitreous, you probably will get more as well. So the longer you wait, the more effective the surgery is going to be when they're able to pull more vitreous out and remove more floaters. Again, on average, because that's a gross generalization, but I would expect that to be the case. Talked about my personal experience. Talked about younger patients, which I include myself in that bucket, certainly when I first started noticing them and up to today when I'm considering a repeat surgery on my right eye. Talked about the risks, weigh them carefully. Talked about the benefits, extremely beneficial in the right circumstance. Talked about PVD, vitreous detachment, why it's important to have a frank conversation with your doctor about whether or not they're going to be able to do that and do it safely, and whether or not you should even be doing it or you should be waiting a little bit longer until more vitreous detaches. Safety kind of weighed into all of this, and then I talked about recurrent floaters, which is what I'm suffering from today. That's my overall journey. That's where I'm at. I've had 2 vitrectomies. Eye is healthy, very successful surgery, one that's less so, but still better than it used to be. The way it is today, it's kind of regressed almost back to when I did the first surgery, but it's slightly better. And I had the past 3 years almost floater free out of that eye. That was a huge relief. Talked about why you should or should not do the surgery. Talked about some of the alternatives that are projected on the internet and why I hope you ignore those, and I hope they start to hold some of those people accountable that are making those videos. And I just ran through kind of the gambit of the last 20 years. Any questions on what I didn't cover, feel free to leave them in the comments, but I really hope that you all learned something out of this today. I know this was long, probably fairly painful, but I felt it was my duty. I've given a lot of positive updates on my surgery and videos in the past, and I felt obligated to share this experience with you all today because I didn't want to give the impression that I'm only reporting the positive. I've had a regression in my right eye now, and I feel it's my obligation to let you all know that because I've talked about how effective and happy I was with this surgery, and I don't want to ignore or downplay the potential risks, but also the potential side effects. This will help you make a more informed decision, and I want to be honest and upfront with everyone about how things have been going over the last 20 years. I'll probably make another video in 6 months to a year, answering any questions that I get, and also continuing to let people know how my right eye is progressing and if there's any change in my left. Hope everyone's having a great 2025, and I look forward to connecting in the future.